Welcome to the Daily Faded. My name is Hetz. This is where we get faded daily and talk about the politics and news of the day. I hope you'll join me and take a sip or take a toke. Republican National Convention night number 4. I can't believe I've watched 4 nights of the RNC and I've lived to tell the story. So atrocious. So atrocious. I guess there's lots to talk about tonight. Before I get into the RNC, let's do a little update on Trump is still speaking. I've got it going on my phone. But let's do a quick update on coronavirus. The world has now had 24.6 million cases of coronavirus, with 261,000 new confirmed cases in the world today. And the world is over 834,000 deaths from coronavirus. In the US, we passed 6 million confirmed cases with 44,000 new cases today. Again, that looks to be in the 35 to 45,000 cases a day plateau that we've been looking at for the last week or so. We'll see if that ever goes down again. And we are at 184,764 deaths in the United States, with 1,111 coronavirus deaths reported today. Here in California, we are up to 692,000 cases, which is the most of any state in California, of any state in the country. And we had 135 new deaths today in California, bringing us to a total of 12,685. 12 million people have lost their health insurance during this pandemic. 12 million people. Either 7 or 9 million people had already lost health insurance since Donald Trump took office. So the health insurance numbers have just gotten even worse thanks to the pandemic. Mark Meadows and Nancy Pelosi spoke today, but it was a short call, a short conversation, and Pelosi took Meadows to task in the press afterwards, and basically said, they're not willing to do a real deal, so we're ready to talk when they're ready to do a real deal. And what she's talking about there is trying to get the White House to come up by $1 trillion from what their $1 trillion offer had been. Anyway, I have no idea if anything's going to come of that. Neither party seems to particularly care about the people who are suffering, the people who need the direct aid and need it now. Pelosi, Pelosi seems to be enjoying the moment a little bit too much. Anyway, getting back to Trump and the RNC, this was in the New York Times today. This is unbelievable. Kellyanne Conway, President Trump's departing counselor, said on Thursday that Mr. Trump stood to benefit politically from the kind of unrest that erupted this week in Kenosha, Wisconsin, after the police shooting of an unarmed black man, Jacob Blake. Quote, "The more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better it is for the very clear choice on who's best on public safety and law and order," Ms. Conway said on Fox and Friends this morning. Let me say that again. The more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better it is for the very clear choice on who's best on public safety and law and order. So basically she's saying the more violence and crime there is in our cities, the more people will know that Donald Trump is going to stop violence and crime in our cities. That is happening under his watch. Completely confusing and conflicting messaging as usual. Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, said the NBA players had the luxury of taking a night off from work when asked about the strike in an interview with Politico. Quote, "Most Americans don't have the financial luxury to do that," he added. "I think it's nice that they're standing up for the issue, but I'd like to see them start moving into concrete solutions." So let me get this right. there's all kinds of civil unrest in the country, and people are outraged over systemic racism in policing. And Jared Kushner would like for the NBA to start moving into concrete solutions. Is he saying that it's the NBA's job to fix things that aren't working in American society? Is he outsourcing the responsibilities of the president to the NBA? These people, they don't even speak. They don't even think when they speak, and they say things that are just insane. Anyway, the RNC is, everything in the RNC is either awful or 1 degree away from awful. In some ways, it was another very dark night. A lot of, I'll tell you, just seeing the White House turned into a campaign prop is such a signal of corruption. The former ethics guy who left when Trump became president, the Office of Ethics, Walter Schaub, tweeted, "This abomination may be the most visible misuse of official position for private gain in America's history. It is an abuse of the power entrusted to this man, the breach of a sacred trust. It is the civic equivalent of a mortal sin, maybe a religious one too, and it is a harbinger." Walt Schaub is always very hard on the president, but I think he is absolutely right. When you look at the White House and you see a giant Trump-Pence sign, it is disturbing. We've never seen that before. We've never seen the White House adorned with campaign paraphernalia. Look, I'm going to talk a little bit about what some of the speakers said tonight. It's tiring. It's just tiring to talk about the RNC. Kevin McCarthy was one of the earlier speakers. He bragged about Trump's military and economy, bragged about the border, said we face an invisible enemy and we will defeat it because President Trump unleashed a Marshall Plan for Main Street. How did that turn out? 12 million people have lost their insurance since the pandemic started. Over 50 million people have filed for unemployment. Marshall Plan for Main Street. Thousands of businesses have shuttered permanently. Marshall Plan for Main Street. How did that turn out? And then he says Democrats will dismantle our institutions, which is really rich because let's see, who destroyed the EPA? Donald Trump. Who destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? Donald Trump. Who has hollowed out the diplomatic ranks in the State Department? Donald Trump. Who has completely ignored the intelligence community? Not that I trust the intelligence community, but Donald Trump. So the person dismantling our institutions is Donald Trump. To say that that an institutionalist like Joe Biden would dismantle the institutions of government is absurd on its face. Mitch McConnell also came out to speak. Claims the Democrats want to tell you when you can go to work, when your kids can go to school, tell you what kind of car you can drive, what sources of information are credible. They want to defund the police. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment. They want free healthcare for illegal immigrants, and they want to get more Democrats in the Senate by making D.C. into a state. He said, "We are the firewall against Nancy Pelosi's agenda." They're in control of the Senate. They're in control of the Senate. They have the White House, yet they're the firewall against the Democrats. Again, it doesn't. They make arguments that can't be taken seriously as good faith arguments because they're not good faith arguments. We will continue to support American families as we defeat the coronavirus, said Mitch McConnell. Yes, that's rich that Mitch McConnell supports families. That's really rich. Then the Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, came out, and I'm skipping several speakers because I couldn't write something down about every Yahoo who came out and talked about Trump. Anyway, Sean Reyes, the Utah Attorney General, talked about his father fighting for freedom in the Philippines, and then talked about prosecuting people for human trafficking. Said a lot of explicit and scary things about human trafficking, said Trump was overwhelmed with compassion to take care of those who have been trafficked. Trump has done more to end human trafficking than any president in history. And I couldn't help but wonder if this guy was talking to the QAnon audience specifically, since that's their big hang up. I mean, they don't say trafficking, they say pedophilia rings, but, you know, small difference if you're trying to appeal to them. And then, of course, we had sleepy Dr. Ben Carson. He mentioned Jacob Blake and his family and the other families that have been affected by violence in Kenosha. He said, quote, "America is great when we behave greatly." And he said, President Trump doesn't dabble in identity politics. That's because President Trumple jumps full on headfirst into identity politics, white identity politics, and white grievance politics. That is what he is all about. You know, and then more of the same about, do we want a big government that controls our lives from cradle to grave? Blah, blah, blah. Trump keeps his promises, is transparent, is real, blah, blah, blah. He's speaking slowly. Ben Carson was speaking so slowly and so condescendingly, and as if he was talking to a child. It was quite irritating. It was quite irritating. And then we had the great, the one and only Rudy Giuliani. Unfortunately, it wasn't the batshit crazy Fox News Giuliani that we've all come to know and loathe. It was some kind of sane, restrained Giuliani. I mean, he was painting a horrific picture of Biden's America that they keep talking about from Trump's America. Giuliani talked about violent crime coming back in New York City at alarming, unheard of rates. Said that Democrat mayors and progressive DAs release rioters and criminals back into the street to riot and criminalize again. That Democrats have ruined New York and they will ruin America. Biden is a defective candidate, a Trojan horse for Bernie, BLM, and their pro-criminal, anti-police, socialist policies. Everyone agreed that the George Floyd killing was wrong, but Democrats couldn't work with Trump because they would give him a political win. What? He's saying something to the effect of Democrats wouldn't work with Trump on policing. Again, sometimes it's hard to even make sense of what they're talking about. And then he went into the all Black Lives Matter, all lives matter routine and just hit riots over and over again. He keeps saying progressive Democrat mayors, and I don't know if he actually knows the difference between a progressive and a liberal. I don't know if he knows what the word progressive actually means. I know Bill de Blasio likes to call himself a progressive mayor, but he really is not a progressive mayor. And I don't know which mayors really are actually progressive. But like I said, it was a restrained Rudy. And he didn't humiliate himself, which was really surprising. I expected him to humiliate himself as soon as I heard that he was speaking. Senator Tom Cotton, a fascist among fascists, came out to speak. He compared the records of Biden and Trump. Biden slashed the military, Trump expanded it. Biden let ISIS rampage, Trump destroyed ISIS. Biden opposed the bin Laden raid, Trump killed Soleimani. Biden sent cash to Iran, Trump ripped up the Iran deal. Biden coddled socialist dictators in Cuba and Venezuela, Trump fights communists. I don't know how Joe Biden coddled Venezuela. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, there were so many lies about then there's that the one lie that they tell over and over, that Trump created VA choice, which Obama did, but Trump keeps taking credit for it. Cotton said Biden aided and abetted China's rise for 50 years, but Trump stands up to China. And then Tom Cotton starts bullshitting about not wanting war. This is a guy who wrote an editorial in the Wall Street Journal about sending troops into the streets of America to hunt down the anarchists. He is truly a fascist. And when he talks about ending war, don't believe Tom Cotton. Just don't believe him at all. And then I have to say, Ivanka Trump came out to introduce Trump and told a story of a president who is fighting for you from dawn to midnight, she said. She gave a very positive speech about Trump. Little to no attacks against Joe Biden in her speech. Just glorious praise for the dear leader Donald Trump. And she took every little thing that Trump may or may not have done since he's been in office and tried to turn it all into something wonderful. It occurred to me, one of the advantages of incumbency is that even if you're a lazy ass like Trump, who never works and never, the office itself, there's some amount of busy work for the office of the presidency. And so they get to pick out all these tiny little things that they did and inflate them and make them seem like major legislative achievements or something along those lines. Anyway, Ivanka talked about Trump having the first peace deal in the Middle East in a quarter of a century. I've talked about the UAE deal before. I don't think it's as big an achievement as they're making out to be. And then she said something fantastic. She said, he doesn't do things for the elite because he does things for you. You are the elite to him, she says. And she's talking to 1,500 people invited to an event at the White House who are by definition elite. So to say he doesn't work for the elite, he works for you, when she's talking to those people who are clearly elite, they can't maintain internal logical consistency in a single thing that they say. So then comes the big show, Trump. And I'm going to talk about Trump a little bit, and then this is going to be an early ending stream because I'm done. I'm done. The RNC has made me done. Trump came out. He mentioned Hurricane Laura, said that the damage was far less than they thought it would be 24 hours ago, talked about his family and his late brother, Robert. And Trump started off very optimistically, very positively, very glowing. He talked about a new spirit of unity, but how long will that actually last? Quote, America is not a land cloaked in darkness. America is the torch that lights the entire world, he said, trying to do that shining city on the hill routine. This was a completely and totally different speech from the speech that he gave 4 years ago. It was completely and totally different from his inaugural speech. And then he made all these comments about the White House, and he actually talked about how it's known the world over as the people's house. He says this as if he doesn't know that he's using it as his house, not as the people's house when he uses it for a political event. Completely unself-aware of how he's just completely trashing any sense of proper ethics around how the president can use the White House. But he talked about Roosevelt, and he talked about Lincoln, and he talked about all of the people in the White House, and talked about the walls of the White House. And then led it into that he's doing great things. We will defeat the virus and the pandemic and emerge stronger than ever before. But of course, we don't know how. All we know is that he's going to flout FDA rules and try and sneak treatments and vaccines in before they've actually been successfully tested. Trump is the ultimate self-myth maker, and that's what he was doing tonight, was creating a new myth of Trump, a new myth of Trump as happy, glorious, optimistic leader who has brought us all great things and wonderful things, while Joe Biden is the destroyer of America's jobs and will be, quote, the destroyer of American greatness. He goes through trade, law and order, how to stop the radical movement, which will completely destroy and dismantle the American way of life. The left sees a wicked nation that must be punished for its sins. In America, we put faith in our almighty God. All right, dude, not me, okay? Have all your God time that you want. I don't put faith in your God. So I got nothing for you there. Again, he paints an absolutely ridiculous picture of what great shape the country is in right now, despite the fact that we're suffering from a pandemic, a crisis of racism and police brutality, an economic crisis like we've never seen before, and a climate crisis that is driving, fire tornadoes and hurricanes. And with all of that going on, Trump is painting this bright and shiny picture of the America that he has created in his own image. And then saying that with Joe Biden, it will all fall apart. With Joe Biden, it will all be terrible. The lack of any, I don't know how many times I can say it or how many different ways I can say it, but these people they're just out to lunch. They're completely and totally out to lunch. Look, at the end of the day, Donald Trump has to be defeated. I'm going to stay just this side shy of endorsing Joe Biden. Not that anyone cares. Anyone who watches this is probably voting for Joe Biden anyway. But I don't like Joe Biden. I want Donald Trump to lose, and that unfortunately means Joe Biden has to win. But the lunacy coming out of the White House tonight, with Donald Trump using the White House as a political prop, is frightening. It's frightening. And we've got to put a stop to Trumpism, and we've got to squash it out. So, look, guys, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in this week. I will be back on Monday night at 8 o'clock Pacific, and I think I'm going to have a special guest on Monday night. My first time having a guest on the live stream. So, peace out. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.